So, the reason that I actually asked for this session, because I've taught benevolence 3 times, and I always have a hard time getting 10 hours done. And I can make up a project that's 10 hours, but that doesn't mean all my students do 10 hours. And so I'm trying to get some ideas from people who are more experienced at that. And Lisa suggested that we all get together and talk about how that works. So we invited 3 experienced
Ooh, I like that better than
people.
old.
We invited
Oh.
3 old people to come
Yeah.
and talk about their projects and give us some pointers about how to get them in bounds and how to make sure everybody gets the hours done and what to do if they don't and that sort of thing. And also, I know you are experienced too, so if you have ideas that you want to throw in to help us, that'd also be great. So I think William is going to start. Sarah said he should warm up the room. I told him not to burn it down. There's not much middle ground with William. So, William.
Let me begin by saying that the Leonard Center is here to help you with your service projects as it relates to benevolence, as you need them. Meet Valerie. Valerie's back in the back of the room back here, and Valerie coordinates all of our service placements that you might need a service placement. Now, ideally is best for her to work herself out of a job in the sense that we have connections with organizations and opportunities for service with different clubs, organizations, classes on our campus so that, those kind of turn into long-term projects. Those kind of longitudinal projects tend to give us a better return for the students in a learning experience. We recognize that over years and years of practice with this. The other thing that we're aware of is that with the cohort model changing now to the 1 year, 2 semesters versus benevolence was previously taken anywhere in your 2nd, 3rd, or 4th year, but now with the cohort model changing, it also does bring some existing challenges with the idea of whether or not we can easily fit 10 hours in 6 weeks. Now, we're going to talk about specifically 3 projects that I think has been beneficial for us that we know does work, but I wanted to make sure you understood the availability of the Leonard Center to help you. So if you have needs, if you have an idea, and she also sends these emails out to folks to say, here are some opportunities that you can click on and register for first. But if you've got an idea that doesn't exist there, pitch it to us, and we love making those connections in the community. For me personally, and I've been involved in benevolence since it started, what I found out is that obviously I did and had been doing early on a one-day project. One-day project are easy in and out, they're episodic, it's kind of like the whole deep day thing, and we know that by the time a student gets into their 2nd, 3rd, and 4th year at Lee, we want them to move towards something that's more long-term for them versus the in and out. We don't want every project that they're doing to kind of be in and out. We want it to be, kind of an experience where it's relationship-based and they get to do some recurring kind of types of things. So I personally moved from the big one-day project to where I started doing, instead of 10 hours in one day, we started doing 2 5-hour projects as well. And then this semester, worked really well for my students because we actually then gave them the opportunity to do their service over the course of the 6 weeks. Now, how do you take 6 weeks and say we got to do 10 hours? We understand that to be a challenge, but we also know that it is doable. And so I think it's up to each individual preceptor to figure out what is the best way to make that work. So a couple of quick points from me, and then we'll let these guys, is a neutral inclusive term, right? These ladies, these guys give their opinion. And then we'll come back and let you guys offer any ideas or questions that you might have for us as we work through this. But one of the things that we figured out is you can't wait until the 2nd week to hit this thing. It's got to be communicated the very first week. It's got to be communicated in that very first lab. If you wait till the 2nd lab, they're down to 5 days. If you wait till the 3rd lab, it's over. And so you have to really begin to communicate that in that first lab. And I think for us, what we found out is that not all the students like to do the reoccurring. Some of them prefer to do that big project idea, but because of the nature of the cohort model now being a whole year, we really tried to pan it out over the course of the 6 weeks. So instead of doing a big project, they would need to do something that was reoccurring. So for my class, students did crossover, which is always a good fit for them. It's a good indoctrination to the community and opportunities that exist out here. We also had students who did CK Lee. If you're not familiar with CK Lee, I would suggest you look into that, because CK Lee usually has about an average of an hour and a half per night, and they do those 2 nights a week. They'll do a cooking shift on a Monday. They'll do a delivery shift on a Tuesday. So you can easily pack in 6 weeks. With that kind of scenario, you're easy to get those 10 hours for those students as well. And I think the other thing is, and this has been a challenge for some, is being able to make sure that every student in the class gets the 10 hours, because it's kind of just poor academic integrity if we let one student get by with 6 hours and one student has to do 10 hours. And so we do have to group it with the 10-hour fit there. And so I think that's why the buddy system of doing a reoccurring project, or the idea of a one-day in and out project, has seemed to work for us in the past. So that's my spiel, and we'll hear from these guys on their projects, and then we'll probably let Valerie give you, she has towards the end, we have a comment or two we can make on some ways in which you can communicate with us to get this done. So.
Okay. Some of the things, and I have forms here for contact information and everything, but some of our best ones are life
Pass them out.
bridges. Yeah, if you want to. Life bridges, do y'all know what that is? It's adult special needs, and I work with Summer Petite, and we can either do, and we can do them at any time during that 6 weeks. And what we usually do, if they have something going on, they have an annual family picnic. We usually help them with that. We do, and I've got some of the things that we do right under there. We play bingo with them, we sing, we dance, or creatively move with them. And I find that my kids are great. I don't care which group you take out there. If you can do them all together, it's like going on Dig Day. If they're real anxious about it, if they're all in it together, they really do well. And so some of them cook at the grill, and we always have something that they can do. Another thing that if they're not doing a family picnic, or it's not a holiday during the 6 weeks, then we'll go to their residential areas. They have houses that they put 3 or 4 people in, and they have caretakers there all the time, but they don't deep clean. And so we'll go out there and deep clean, and I agree with William, do it right away. Now these kids, this last time I had kids that I'd never met before. They were transfer students, and it was fantastic for them to get to know each other that right off the first 6 weeks, at the beginning of the 6 weeks, because they were much warmer coming to class, getting to know each other, and when they're all put in a position like that, they really do shine. So we cleaned this last time. New Hope Pregnancy Center had their walkathon, their fundraiser, and so we did that with them. We went the night before to North Cleveland to help them set up, and then the next morning we came back really early and helped them again. And Judy Galt is my connection there, and I private message her on Facebook. Habitat Restore is always a good resource. If you have people that can't go because they work, this is something they can do on their time. They call the coordinator, but they do have a Facebook page, and you can sign up for volunteering on that page, and then they can work not as a whole group sometimes, and usually what I'll do is take them all out there at once, let them see Habitat Restore, walk them around. Somebody's going to show us what to do, and then they come back and they meet the person that's in charge of volunteers, which is always excellent. I have a widow's circle. My mother's 85 years old. No, I don't get them to come and cut her grass or clean her house. But we work with Sister Alton. Do y'all know Lorraine Alton? We've planted flowers for her before, and she loves. What's really rich about that is that she always invites them in, and she has really taken special attention with a lot of the kids, and they love grandmother types, and so that works out well. Also, Evelyn Knight, y'all might know her, but they're all together. These women get together on Wednesdays and eat lunch, and so they'll let me know if they have anything significant that they need done. And Sister Alton wanted us to put a swing in her tree limb one year, and we did, and she still uses it. So things like that, but the personal one-on-one is great. They take time and show them pictures of their ministry, and Sister Alton gave all of our kids a copy of her husband's book, which was nice. Now, William, I don't know whether you remember this, but you did approve this. Jonathan Dukes is a colleague of mine that cannot drive. We don't want him to drive. He's legally blind.
He's blind.
And so we can get hours for picking him up and taking him home, and it's about it will take about an hour out of the day because he lives way out from Mouse Creek. But I tell my kids, if they just need 1 hour segments, I give them an hour for each trip they make, and they can work this in if they're working somewhere, because we want them to be able to work and not be punished for working their way through school. So they can do this, and I tell them they get a free counseling session. But they work this, and he has a list of people that he'll call. He'll go right down the list, and he'll text them and see if they're available for a certain day. That way Mary can go on and get their daughter, and so that works out really well for 1 hour segments. And the kids always come back and tell me how great that is. I think the personal relationship that the communication with somebody personally really enhances their service, and it's always beneficial to these kids. So those are my favorite.
Let me comment on the last one, because I do remember that we did talk about that. It does kind of fly in the face of the idea here at Lead that most of our service has to be done external from the campus. And the reason behind that is because we're not a free labor force. However, we are aware that there are situations, as in Jonathan's situation, where there is a legitimate need base that can be met by the family. So as a general rule, please don't assume that you can just go out here and make any kind of suggestion to provide any kind of these sources. For people at the Lead community, shoot them to us first. It's much better for the student to get that pre-approved, and we have done that. There is a small number of those. We are aware of those needs, and we do try to meet those as much as we can. So it's not like an all call. It is kind of a case-by-case, legitimate need basis. And so, but we are listening to those needs and trying our best to meet those.
There's always elementary schools that do, and I think you'll probably cover that. But there are always those fall festivals and spring flings and things like that. We can always find a service to do. Sarah?
So I've been working with Lisa. I've been teaching with Benevolence now for 6 years, and I've been working with Lisa. This is my first semester, and I've just been helping her part-time. But I started off working in the program and doing one-day service projects. But I think as I saw the program transition, and I'm so excited about how that program has transitioned over the past few years into just real development of building relationships and learning how to be habitual about your service. And so I started by doing one-day service projects, but that quickly turned into recurring, and that's pretty much all I do now. And I found that it does tend to work really well. I think that if you just follow maybe a few guidelines or just choose, a really good project, it can work well. I love the reoccurring project just because it does allow the students, I think, to build relationships better with the people that they're serving. I found a lot of times that students would go in on a one-day service project, know that they weren't going to see these people again, and just really not put the effort into, and this was just me personally, it might not be everybody else, but just not put much effort into really getting to know the people they were working with. And they would go in, and I don't know about you, but every single class I have every semester, these students are very nervous when they go into this project for the first time. They're very standoffish. This is a different environment for them, a lot of times that they're not comfortable with. And so I found in the one-day service projects that they would usually spend half of the day kind of standing back, really not wanting to interact. And I felt like I was constantly having to push them out of their comfort zone. Whereas with the reoccurring service project, it would take time. The first night would be a little hard, but they'd go back and they'd go back and they'd go back, and they would warm up to the people that they were working with. And then the other thing was that the students, it was exciting to me that from a reoccurring service project, they could actually see the results of the work that they put in. I found we were doing like some service projects and we were going in for a day and doing work, but we were leaving and we would never be in contact with this organization again, and they would never see the fruits of the hard work that they spent that day just trying to help these people. And the projects that I've done, the organization that I'm involved in at the moment is a local church who is in a very low income area. And we do a large outreach children's ministry every Wednesday. They bring in nearly 200 children from the community. Most of these children are in foster care. Their parents are in jail. They come from abusive backgrounds. The pain in these children is just absolutely unbelievable. And they're bussed in every Wednesday. My students come alongside them. They're fed. There's a clothes closet. They learn about the Bible. They play games. And the growth that I've seen in my students, just especially this semester, just from continuing to do that and go back week after week and get to know these kids. So much so that, I think one of the things that we try and push in the program is like habitual learning. They want to do this. They want to change their behavior. They want to continue to serve. And I can say that we meet every Wednesday night, and even though the class is over, a large portion of my class is continuing to go. And we're going tonight, they're going to serve tonight, and it's just, it brings me so much joy to see that that's successful. And so I know it doesn't work for everyone. Like the one-day projects work, and some of you have awesome one-day projects that work really well, and it depends on what you're doing in those. For me personally, the recurring projects have worked really well. And it's worked for me. You have to start it immediately. And so if that means sending an email out right before the class starts, just to let heads up, let them know what's going on, it works. We do, 2.5 to 3 hours every Wednesday, and so that leaves for a make-up day at the end of the class, so that if anyone has missed it, they can go back and they can do it. And it works too, so if students can't make a Saturday, they've missed all their 10 hours in one day, whereas if they miss one Wednesday or one Thursday, they can go back. And one thing that I found is because I've been doing this recurring project with the same organisation, I begin to build a relationship with them myself. And so there's a lot of they're very flexible, we work together and we can think of new ideas and new things that we can do. And so one thing that I have found works really well is there's a possibility that if all your students can't go on a Wednesday or a Tuesday night, you can actually have another night, and they might be having something else go on another night of the week that students can go out. So you have 2 nights a week, and that's just the way that I choose to do it. And I know that you as preceptors have and teachers have really busy schedules, and it's hard for you to do that. And so I found this semester, I partnered up with For Joy's lab. And we took both classes out there, and so he would go or I would go, or you can use your TAs to help you do that, and that's been really beneficial. So if you ever have problems, finding a project or getting your students to fit in with the project you have, teaming up with other labs has been a necessity for me, just because there have been students that don't know what to do. And so I've been able to partner up with somebody else and have them go with them, or say, no, this other preceptor is going on this project, you can go with them. The only other thing that has helped me with the reoccurring is a lot of times, especially if it's a freshman class, I don't want to do the work for them and I want them to put some initiative into this, but especially if it's a freshman class, I found that this is quite a new environment for them, and they are quite scared about the unknown, and they're very unnerved, they're very standoffish. And I think for a lot of my students, the effort and the getting out of your comfort zone is actually the first contact. That's what I found. Once they settle in, they're fine. And so without doing everything for them, I don't want to say I hold their hands, but I try and help them through the process as much as I can. So I send, I think I probably drive them crazy with emails, just asking them, telling them what they need to do and when, and if I can, just to let me know if they can't make it, just so that they're accountable and they know where to be when. But the other thing is that I noticed that some of the students in the past had struggled getting places because of carpools. They just did not step out of their comfort zone to meet with other students in their class and say, can I ride with you? Or, and if we need to just, instead of having them arrange their own carpool, I always just have them meet at the Lena Center at a certain time, and I ask students to come with their cars. And if I have to, I divvy them up and I say, you go with this person, you go with this person. And I'm not trying to be their mom, but sometimes, especially if they're freshmen, especially the first week, it can help them because they feel very uncomfortable about the situation. And there are some instances where students still just don't know what they're going to do in terms of a service project. But I think partnership with other labs has really helped me. Just knowing that I can go to other preceptors that I know do a really good job and say to them, can you take just one student on your project? And that's worked really well. And then, you know, Valerie's helped me a lot. I'm always hesitant to say, well, just come up with something on your own. But if I have to, I'll go down to the Lena Center with them and just sign them up for something down there. But that's what I found just to be the most successful, is just trying to come alongside them without doing everything for them, trying to come alongside them as much as possible just to help them get out of that comfort zone and just make that first step, I think.
And one other observation, then we'll ask you guys if you have any questions or comments as well. Because of the new cohort model, because they spent the fall together in a freshman class, and they're going to be spending that spring together in their class typically, and maybe, you know, if Jimmy and I teach Gateway, Rochelle, I think we're the only three, Angela, you teach Gateway? We're the only three in this room that actually teach Gateway and are also preceptors. So you're probably going to get a class that might be a little bit more closely knit with each other, and you might feel like the outsider. That happened to me one semester, and so it's sometimes a little difficult. And so use that momentum that class spent a whole entire semester together. So find where they're clicking well and get those one or two students that kind of seem to be the ringleader for the class to help you be a coordinator for that project. And that also has worked well with me in the last semester when I did that. And so be aware of that dynamic, because that does exist, and it might be something to use to your advantage versus feeling like you're just, you know, pulling teeth to get them to do something when they've already been doing something for the course of a whole semester anyway. So any comments from you, Valerie, real quick on what they can do, and then we'll open the floor for.
I love Sarah talking about getting together with other preceptors, because that's one thing that I do. I try to track what everyone's doing. So if a student comes to me and says, I need some service hours for benevolence, there are special requirements for benevolence. So I can't just send them to the ARC, right? I can't do that because that doesn't count for benevolence. So once they tell me that these service hours are for benevolence, I look and see what other preceptors are doing already. And then sometimes, and I'll make them take that initiative. I say, here's the email address and here's the name of the person that you need to contact to see if you can go with them on their trip, whether that's a 5-hour trip or a 10-hour or something like that. So that way it's already approved, it's through the benevolence class, they're doing it with their peers, even if it's not their class, and so they don't feel as uncomfortable maybe just showing up somewhere alone, you know, so I really love that idea of getting together with other preceptors and just staying connected that way. But
good.
I don't know, do you guys have questions?
Yeah, just contact us. I mean, we can help you. You know, it's better if you can find a project that you can do over and over and over, because that is actually better for the particular organization, instead of us trying to go do something with them and then we're 3 semesters before we revisit them. Most everything we're doing in the Lena Center right now is trying to find that connection between, again, a class or a club, where they actually, that partner depends on that particular. Now, we understand the students are going to be different faced every semester, but that connection with Lee is strong, and so that's another variable that needs to take place. So if you've got a project that's working and you're comfortable with it, let us know that, and let's champion that, and we'll help advance that. Yes, Jimmy?
One thing that's worked well for me is I send my students to crossover, go with them to crossover, send them to crossover. And crossover is on campus, so they can easily get there. The transportation situation is taken care of by the carpooling of the students who are involved. If they go on a route with somebody, they can take off and go with them. It also gives them a place on a regular basis to plug in and stay plugged in. So what I do on the third segment of Gateway is
talk about
we go through to the Saturday crossover, and then on the benevolence we go back 3 or 4 times and get them involved in that. And most of the students, about half of them or so, usually stick with it and stay involved in the process. So it's close, it's convenient, but it's a really good process as well.
I hadn't thought about that. That might be something, Rochelle, we might want to ask professors if they can just at least talk to their students about benevolence. They won't be with them for the next semester, but definitely that benevolence is coming. I don't know. So, yeah, cool.
I've already been introduced to one of the classes that I'm going to be the preceptor for. I thought that was only one class that asked me to come, but I already met with them.
Great.
Did I read my email to you?
Huh? Well, I guess I didn't, Rochelle, so I will. Slam. That's on video, too. You feel it? I feel the love.
We can edit that out.
But we won't.
No, it's a great idea.
Read the email, because you might have the same idea somebody else has, and if you read the email, you know you're both thinking the same way. So,
There you go.
It's a good idea.
Jeez.
question, Lynn. I had 20-something students last time. And we had a really good project, which was at least 10 hours. But do you keep track of how many hours each individual student puts in? Okay, so,
I do. I actually require them, if it's a project, like if it's crossover, then we know that their route leader in crossover can give verification that they were there. If they did CK Lee, we also know it's the same scenario. If they're doing something, we had a couple that went to Salvation Army and did a deal with them, then we asked that agency to actually verify that form for them. So, you know. And you also can double check that because you can read their reflection papers and determine whether or not they actually showed up. So that's always a plus too. So
Wasn't there a form in the?
there is a form in the
preceptor handbook
there is a
that
form in the
has
preceptor
recurring,
handbook
like,
for that.
these
Yeah.
are the days
Yeah.
I went to this project. That way the site supervisor can sign off on each day.
Yeah.
It's one piece of paper.
And I rely on my TA to help me with that a lot because the TA actually is very, very good at that. That's something that, because they tend to have a greater consistent dialogue with the student than I do, so. Other questions, thoughts, opinions, expressions, slams? That was awesome. I'm gonna read the email right now. Let's see. Let's get it.
Are most of you doing recurring projects, or who of you are doing? Are any of you doing the day projects and it's working really well for you, or I'd just like to know.
I did that last semester. I did a day project in Atlanta, and it worked well.
Okay.
But for me personally, because I'm the director of Kingdom Players, this spring we're going almost every semester, so
Yeah.
it's hard for me to do something recurring where I can be there every week. So it just worked out well for me to do one thing one day. But that's just me personally.
I think crossover, and my TA and I alternate, like, we just go through all the Saturdays and who can do which one and make sure one of us are there.
May I ask, how many hours do they typically get in on a Saturday?
Yeah, it depends. I would say, 3 is usually the average. Some routes are gonna go longer, some might go a little shorter, but they can usually count on at least 3.
And during the semester, there's also a tutoring program that happens on Tuesday nights, is that right? Tuesday nights for 2 hours in the Leonard Center upstairs, where anyone in the community can bring their student. When?
4:30 to 6:30.
4:30 to 6:30. So for students who might want to tutor, and again, what we're finding out is if, in Sarah, some of my students went with Sarah's group, if they make a connection with that kid, they're typically gonna go back.
Yeah.
And that's always a win-win. And so they're gonna get those 10 hours, plus they can start building towards their 80 as well.
If I can just say with crossover, if you're interested in using crossover as one of your avenues, please let me know, just because I like to let the directors know, so they can know what to expect, because the last thing we want is like for them to be inundated one Saturday, because they're used to having about 60 people this semester. Imagine how that could jump next semester if everyone's just like, let's go to crossover, you know, then they just need to be prepared for that. I'm not saying don't do crossover, but just let me know so I can give them a heads up.
To say what I did is, I'm working with a mission church in Chattanooga that a few years ago, I got off the list from the Leonard Center as they just advertised they needed help, and I made contact with that pastor, and now I just continued that.
Right.
And so some semesters, it may be we go help them with an all-day event, you know, an community outreach, and then other times we may help them a few times with something, but yeah, so the students may be different, but we have that relationship now. I mean, the pastor and I, we chat and we're friends, and, you know, we go and work with, it's, you know, are really rough.
I'm telling you
But
guys,
they appreciate
that's,
knowing that we're consistent and that my class is gonna be
Yeah,
there.
that's
every
gold for
semester.
us.
So that's what we,
Yeah.
yes, we have just never had to look for anything else since, cause I've just kept that going. So it depends. Sometimes it may be only one day. We go and spend a whole Saturday there doing a festival or doing something, but, you know, other times it's.
and as you build those partnerships, if you actually know that, okay, well, I'm not gonna be teaching Benevolence for this next 6 weeks, send that information to Valerie, because there may be other students who are looking for a project that we actually could plug them into that existing partnership, even though they're not part of Benevolence, because what we're trying to get these students to do is to move from, again, that quick in and out experience to that lifestyle approach. So. It's not always easy, but I think it's always doable to get 10 hours in. You just gotta start early and tell the students it's really not an option. So.
Did anyone have any problems? I know that we're coming up to the winter and to the spring semester. So did anyone have any problems last year with the snow affecting, and how did you work that out? Or you didn't?
We were, last spring, one of my classes, we were working, somewhere, and it was downtown, and we just walked in the snow. Everybody got up and we just dropped down there, so, but yeah, if you gotta drive, that may be an issue to reschedule or something, I know.
2 springs ago, I was working with, YCAP, and, just down here at First Presbyterian, and if there's a snow day, then the school, like, it's rare that we get, I didn't say that, but we got a bunch of snow days that year, a couple years ago. And then that means the schools got way more snow days, and so there weren't any kids to tutor during that time, and so we definitely I had to create some extensions, like I just, I don't know, I didn't know what else to do, I don't know if that was right to do, but it was that first session, so I still had some time, so they were able to kind of make those couple hours up. Now, I don't know if that's the best way to handle that, but I just couldn't see like an act of God like that, like preventing them, from, to make them fail,
It's all
'cause they
God's
always
fault.
went every Thursday, and they couldn't, so.
I have had extenuating circumstances like that. I won't say I haven't, like, sometimes I know especially if you're teaching multiple sections of this, like you can't allow 20, 40, 60 students an extension, but there have been situations that I have a student who is very ill or has had something go on, and for me to say to them, no, 10 hours due by next week, I just can't do that. And so, I have, definitely work with them, and sometimes you have to do that, I think. So.
It definitely makes your life harder. It makes your life, because you gotta keep track of that, so you want to minimize that. You don't want that to ever really seem like it's an option.
Yeah.
But also with YCAP, and we were gonna do some gardening there, spend 5 hours in their garden, but if the ground is solid rock, cause then you can't do that, so we had to kind of work around and just make things work there with YCAP, and we did, but that was 2 years ago, that winter. So that's something to think about when you're thinking about your projects and you're planning what you wanna do, think about the weather and how that might impact, like if you're just dead set on this one day Saturday project and it starts storming and you guys were gonna be outside, like what else are you gonna do? Sometimes when I don't think, it might have been with,
Somebody.
Life Bridges, sorry, it might have been Life Bridges, I kept thinking summer, but Life Bridges, where I was wondering, I asked them, do you have an inside location as well? Cause this is an outside picnic event or something, but what if it rains? Because we're really concerned about that, and so is there an alternate location? So I remember asking about that too. It's just something to keep in mind, especially if it's just that, it was a summer benevolence class, which that is really short. So you wanna make sure you get those, that was like a week long, so.
And I would suggest if you are a preceptor, once I read Rochelle's email, I'll probably have more detail on this, but I would suggest if you're a preceptor and you know who you're going to be precepting for, that you ask that professor if you can come in and meet those students, since you're not a gateway professor for them.
How might one find that information?
How might one find that information?
Did you get the email from Dr. Moyen? He sent out a while ago about the cohort. Anyway, it has, I can send it.
I read that one. It has an Excel document on it, and it actually tells you that. So it has 3 columns on it. Thank you, I did read it. And so the 3 columns will actually tell you if you're a gateway professor, what you're doing this term, when you're doing benevolence, and when you're doing global perspectives. And it also tells you who the preceptor is if you're not that preceptor.
Okay.
So,
So
yeah.
if you're a preceptor, you can look back and see
Yes.
which class is coming from which gateway instructor and you contact them.
Yes.
I'm sure we could resend that out to all the preceptors.
Yeah, I can send it, and that would be a really good idea. Like, I would like to do that, because that would allow me and anyone else who wants to go in and say that this is what we're thinking about for a service project. Heads up. Can you get that night free?
Yeah, so what I asked the gateway instructors to do is to one, at least like reach out and hopefully meet with you and talk with you about the class dynamic and stuff like that. And then I asked if they had time to invite you to come in for a few minutes. Now just keep in mind with Operation Christmas Child, class ends at Thanksgiving break, and so a lot of them really probably can't squeeze that in at this point. But at least I'm asking them to at least meet with you to tell you about the class, so you can know who's not going to do well, right? Like, so you can kind of preemptively know who you need to keep tabs on, or who's going to be the leaders in the class you can really rely on. At least that.
And if you can't go in and spend 20 minutes, you might can just come in and say, hey, this is my face, you're going to see me in
In the spring, excited
in the spring,
about it.
and that's always a positive. So
For sure.
I teach both, so I don't have that, but if I would find out who those people are and ask them. I can't imagine them saying, especially if they read the email.
Yeah, I'll resend that out so that you can all have that information.
Any problems we need to be aware of? That's good to know.
You said something about a handbook. When can we expect to get that?
We're going to do a training. I think that for you're new, aren't you? Yeah. We're going to be doing a training for new preceptors. I think we're planning on doing it on reading day. So just be an hour. So just we can go through that day and just go over a lot of this stuff again, but just go over the preceptor handbook and that will lay out a lot of what you're going to be doing in that 6 weeks. And I think we are going to have a time for existing preceptors just to meet again, before next semester, just because there have been a few changes, and the program has transitioned somewhat. So we just want to make sure that everyone's on the same page and with everything that's going on. And I know some of you maybe you haven't taught since we started the writing prompts in class, and so that's something new that we're doing, which, by the way, I think, going off subject a little bit, I think that's gone quite well. Hopefully you have too. So yeah, just going over stuff like that. So if you heads up, I'll be emailing you about that soon. We'll go